So a couple things I used to believe about being a man that I do not believe anymore are several things. Probably most importantly, I think that I used to believe that being a man is really about being the best, being better than other people, being a winner, being just better than other people and the best at things. And then women, being able to use women as achievement and trophy, sleeping with women, whatever it may be. And then finally, I think there's the next biggest thing I used to believe is probably just around like the invalidation of men's feelings and emotions, and actually the way we are told and shown in society that we shouldn't feel a certain way. Actually, we're not even told that we shouldn't feel a certain way. It's not that. It's when we do feel a certain thing, we are immediately invalidated already. Even people have a subconscious response to how a man is feeling. They're already subconsciously responding by invalidating it. We've got to a point now where many men and even a lot of females actually don't even know how to respond to a man being emotional. They don't know what to say, they don't know how to hold space for him, and we've got to this point where we no longer are in touch with this side of us that realistically, when you neglect your emotional side and your feelings, and of course, especially as a man, I guess because I'm talking mostly directed towards men now, but when you neglect that part of yourself, you are forgetting half of your being, or a third of your being, if you want to say body, mind, and spirit or soul. And there's the three big things that I think that I used to believe a man it was someone who didn't need their feelings, didn't need their emotions, and shouldn't have felt certain feelings and emotions: sadness, cry, grief, despair, and any negative feminine energy emotion. I'll put that in air quotes because that's not necessarily true. And using women as achievement, and then being the best at something, being better than other people at something. Those were manly things. That's how you're a real man if you're the best. You're a real man if you are tough and you don't feel emotions. And you're a real man if you're a lady killer, or you're a slayer. If you get chicks. That's like what it was. That's what we have been told, and we are continuously told, and we actually tell ourselves that now. All of those things we are constantly reflected to us as this is how you should show up, this is how men should be. And I just don't believe that anymore. I have a vastly different belief about how a man should be, what a real man is, and how a real man should show up, and the role and place that he has in society and relationships. Moving on, I will go into a bit more details on who I was pretending to be in my early 20s. I think in my early 20s, I was really pretending to be someone, well, I'll reframe that, because the question is, who was I pretending to be in my early 20s? And I think a big part of this is actually acknowledging the fact that at that time, in those moments, I wasn't pretending to be anything, and I thought I was being genuine. I was just ignorant, and I was just unaware of how I was showing up, the type of person I was being, the things my ego had me doing, and just the way I was operating, and what I viewed as right and wrong, and all of these things that I was, this identity I had back then in my 20s. And I'm still in my 20s, but the first part of that is just to understand the fact that when people use the terminology pretending, or who you pretend to be, it sort of actually comes off like with a bit of a negative connotation, as if you are purposely hiding something and you're aware of it. But I think a lot of the time we're actually not even aware of the fact that we're showing up differently, or our ego's doing a certain thing. And so I guess to answer that, the identity I had throughout my 20s was really just this people pleaser person with no boundaries, who wanted to include people and be friendly, and really just make sure everyone is okay, and I wanted to be really liked by people, so I never wanted to upset people. I went out of my way to do nice things. I went out of my way to be a person that people liked. So I had all sorts of external validation, and all of the ways that I was modeled of what love was growing up, I just relived that and reprojected those exact things into all of my situations and all of my settings. I think I surrounded myself with some people who needed emotional sort of support or help or guidance, people who were often struggling. If there's someone who was being left out, or if I often assumed the responsibility to be a caretaker and to be a person who didn't want to make people feel bad, and as a result I would make myself responsible for other people's problems, for other people's way that they're feeling. And as time went on, that just completely depleted my energy. And as well as depleting my energy, I also had no boundaries. I had zero boundaries, where many people in my life were living already past, they had encroached and over jumped my boundaries, and they were living already inside my boundaries. So I had no energy for myself. I constantly was spending time for others, doing and energy for others, and so I completely neglected a massive part of myself, and I'm still working through that. But the main takeaway here is that I grew up in a way, and I developed into this young adult who really was seeking external validation, who wanted to be liked, who was desperate for approval, who was desperate to feel like they were a good person, who was really feeling like it was my responsibility to help people, and that love and relationships were highly conditional. So the more good that I do, the more good that I did for others, the more good that it would come to me. And that's pretty much how I went from my early 20s up until now, and I feel like I'm coming out of the tail end of that, as developing into now someone who, because a lot of those things are not necessarily bad when you put it on paper, but they do have their things that actually cause problems and issues and challenges for myself. And so something I've been working on a lot has been boundaries and protecting my own energy in this way, and really reiterating to myself that other people's problems are not my responsibility. And that's been a really hard one for me. And understanding I can still be compassionate to other people and not deal with their problems myself. And that took me a really long time, and I still am working on that. And it's a process, but now I think like that's just where I'm coming out of on the tail end of this growth journey of mine, in this area in particular for myself. I also was a person who strongly believed those things that I said previously about being a man, and that being the best was like how you're a man. So I would always just try to be the best, highly competitive, work hard to just be better than other people. I cared mostly about winning and being better and appearing better or more powerful or more influential in some way. So I'll move on a little bit more now into another question which I had for the video, which was, when did you first realize you'd been living someone else's life? So the first time I realized that I was living someone else's idea of what my life should be was probably, I want to say 1 or 2 years ago. It wasn't like a one moment click and it was like a big realization. It was sort of progressive over time. I realized that after a string of decisions that I made for myself, whether it was studying, career, activities, traveling, going places, getting with a girl, I had done all of these things, and all of these decisions I realized over time had actually played out because I believed and trusted in someone else's decision for me and what they thought was the best thing for me. And it's nothing to do with them. It has zero to do with the person that was telling me this stuff, because they are just ignorantly projecting things onto me. And most of the time, they are people who actually love you and care for you and want the best for you. But at the time, you don't know that. And so when you're going through it and you're realizing these things about yourself and you're healing these parts of you, you cannot be holding resentment towards the people or the reasons that actually ended you up where you are, or where you found yourself. And yeah, I think the first time was probably a couple of years ago, after I had been in stressful jobs, my studies. I changed my studies and my career, and I just realized over time, like, whoa, I feel like I've done all of these things. And my ex-girlfriend actually asked me, what do I want? She said, in my life, what do I want? And I could not answer her because I didn't know what I wanted. And I didn't know because I had for so long trusted and believed that everyone else outside of me knew what was best for me. So I listened to them, and therefore I lost complete connection to my own voice and my own sort of light inside that would guide me. And I was left completely in the dark. And that's, again, this is another thing that I'm still currently working through, but I'm sort of at the phase of like, okay, this all happened, now I've realized this, and I'm now able to be conscious of it and like turn this into something and do something with it and create some new reality for myself, that I can connect to my voice and I can start living the life that I want to live for myself and not listen to other people, because they don't know what's best for me. No one knows what's best for me other than me. So I will move on to question 4 now that I had, which is, I don't really know, I want to share too much about specific people in my life, but what did some figures in my life teach me about emotions, directly or through how they showed up? I think like a lot of us, so a lot of the way emotions were modeled to me growing up, and still even to this day, are, or was, again, not really modeled to me in any negative or negatively meaning way, mostly just through a subconscious just default response to emotions as it was already, which was just immediately invalid. There's zero invalidation for emotions, and I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges as a guy. It's like, if you feel something, it's just already invalidated. I've seen it. I've seen women. I've seen girls do it to boys. Women do it to men immediately. They are, but they don't think that they're invalidating. No one's invalidating men's emotions on purpose. And a lot of the time, sometimes they are. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of the time, where the damage is happening, I think, is this subconscious responses people have just already to men's emotions and already being invalidated. And so just growing up, you have these external forces and role models and influences, and especially now with social media and influencers, there's so much projection from other people in the world, and poor modeling of how we as individuals and society can show up for and validate men's emotions. So growing up, a lot of the time, immediate invalidation for emotions, and also a negative connotation to certain emotions. So being weak, being scared, being fearful, you're a pussy, and you're not a man, you're a girl, even being called just a girl or a pussy or crybaby, I guess. I don't even know if I was ever called a crybaby, but I think people are. Or maybe they just say that in cartoons. But that's one sort of aspect about how I think emotions were modeled to me, or where I got my understanding of emotions. And there is another side to that, which is actually the side of not being in touch with your emotions. So not only was there, and I think this is where the invalidation comes from men, when men's emotions and feelings are invalidated, especially from like a societal and subconscious level from other people. I think that a lot of that actually comes from people and groups of people over time who they themselves have had zero connection to their emotions. They themselves have got all of their own trauma and triggers and experiences around emotions, and them being avoidant of them and suppressing them. And so all of the way that we treat ourselves and society and people put onto us about emotions and invalidation for how we feel is just coming from another group of people and individuals who they themselves don't actually have a connection. They invalidate themselves in their own emotions. They beat themselves up for feeling certain ways. They maybe call themselves pussies and weak and bitch and sad and whatever when they feel certain emotions. So what they're doing to you and what other people show you about how to be and show you their expectations and what they believe men should be like in regards to emotions, they are only doing those exact things to themselves because they are stuck. They are alone. They are really probably desperate in some sense for this connection to themselves. They're trying to fill some hole, or really better, they're trying to just ignore the hole that they've got within themselves. And where did that hole come from? That hole just came from a whole other group and set of people and individuals who just did the exact same thing over time and time again. So the way, I guess two of these main ways that emotions were really shown to me as throughout my life so far has been validation of emotions, of men feeling certain things, and then also just the self-neglect of emotions and feelings, and the disconnection of yourself and your feelings. Actually, there is one more thing that was shown about there was actually one more thing that I was shown or modeled with emotions and feelings growing up, which I did not mention, which is mostly around distraction and busying yourself. And so if you are never still and silent, you don't have time to feel and process. So the busier you are, the more occupied you are, the less time you will have for these emotions to poke up and say, hello, I'm here, you can feel me. So the busier and busier you are and the more distracted you are, the better you will feel, the safer and more settled you will feel, because you don't feel your emotions coming up because you are doing other things. Your conscious awareness is outside of you. It's cleaning, it's working, it's doing something potentially productive, it's learning something, it's playing an instrument, it's eating food, it's all bad habits, good habits, it's all sorts of things that just take you away from feeling your emotions. And so I had, somewhat of a traumatic, tumultuous childhood, and for most of my childhood, I was playing sports every single day. It was school, sports, sleep, school, sports, sleep, and it was just that. And from the age of 4 to the age of 21, I was full-time, everything into sports, soccer, multiple sports, whatever it is. I was just always doing something, never really sitting at home in silence, alone, feeling my body, feeling anything. There was no time for that, and there was no time for self-reflection. There was none of that. And so that's to add on to the third thing out of this modeling and my own experience of what I was shown for emotions and feelings as a man is distraction, and really avoiding them in some way through distraction, and in particular productive distraction, actually productive in air quotes. And so for the last question that I have here, which is, if I could say something to myself at 22, so it's actually, if I were to say something to myself at the age of 22 and I were to listen, I would say to him, get in connection with yourself. Don't listen to other people. They don't know what's best for you. Learn to reconnect with yourself. Learn to protect your energy, and learn to really be able to be independent for yourself emotionally, and don't rely on other people to feel a certain way. Don't try to attain certain feelings from the outside world. You must learn to attain the way you feel and the way you want to feel and the way you deserve to feel from yourself, from inside yourself, whether it's validation, whether you want to feel valued, whether you want to feel heard, whether you want to feel validated, whether you want to feel seen, whether you want to feel proud, whatever it is, whether you want to feel loved, whatever it is, do not rely on anyone and anything externally to provide that to you. And you must learn to provide that to yourself. And that's it. I would say that to myself, and I believe he would listen. I think he would listen. And so here you go. Maybe it will help you.